Hey guys, in this episode, you're going to be meeting Stu Sweet from Night Owl Consulting. And he started off his career in the mortgage industry as a young man in his early 20s. And in his own words, until you're doing something productive, work your ass off. So, what he did is he went in and started working as a loan officer assistant to top producers. And he just worked and worked and worked from what he says until he was able to take over somebody's business, which I think is so cool because he went from being an LOA to a loan officer and owner of a book of business of 20, I think 25 years. And then he transitions years later into owning his own consulting firm that outsources specifically to the mortgage industry to help companies do all the back end work. So it's going to be a really interesting show. I hope you guys like it. Hey, everybody, this is Dino from The Way Podcast, and we are here today to empower, educate, and equip loan officers the way lending should be done. And we do this by talking to other successful loan officers and people in our industry just to follow their journey, right? Because we want to know what they're doing today, but we go all the way back to day one, and then we transition through all these major milestones back to today again. Because honestly, I feel that is probably the best way for everybody to learn. You know, success leaves behind clues. And ultimately, by talking to other people, I believe we have a lot to learn, right? Like why bother touching a hot stove when you know it's hot? Well, sometimes you just have to do it for yourself. But the smart ones will listen to the person that says, don't touch it because it's hot. You're going to burn yourself. So that's what my goal here is today, is for us to all learn from other people's past wins and losses. So I want to bring on Stu Sweet from Night Owl Consulting and welcome you to the show.
Right on. Thanks, Dino. Glad to be here. Appreciate you having me on. Excited to share my story and talk about all the times I burned my hand on the stove.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited. Dave Savage introduced us and said that you got a great story, and also you're not even in the mortgage business anymore. At least not doing loans, right?
Not directly. Yeah. I mean, I get once an LO, always an LO. So I was a loan officer for 11 years. But yeah, for the last 3 years, I broke off, started an outsourcing mortgage company. So we help mortgage companies hire overseas. So I've been doing that for the last 3 years and, you know, taking what I learned in the mortgage business and trying to apply it to outsourcing, which has been a fun journey.
Yeah. And I'm super excited to hear about that. Right. And I have both, positive and probably some negative context as to what that might look like. And that's why I was eager to talk to you about that, because I do think that we are in a new world and people should consider solutions. And when I found out some of your client base, I was like, well, they're pretty successful loan officers. And if they're using you, then chances are you're doing something right. And that should be something that I want everybody to be able to tap into, because, you know, the name of the game isn't just getting more loans all the time. Sometimes you got to sit and look at the middle of your P&L and be like, where can I cut expenses to be more profitable? So,
right. Yeah. So just don't think it's that simple. Like outsourcing, sometimes people say it's good, it's bad. It depends on the approach. It's like anything in life. It's like there's a right way and there's a wrong way. So, you know,
for sure. Well, let's do this. Let's go back to day one of when you started in this industry. And then let's walk through your journey and all the way back to today again. When did you get started in the mortgage industry?
Right out of college. So I had grown up, my mom and most of my family members were in sales. And so growing up, I had seen like, oh, wow, if you sell things, you can make more money than if you just get a job. So I had a political science degree, which really wasn't relevant to anything at all, but I always knew I wanted to be in sales. So anyway, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there was a company that had our RPM Mortgage that they were putting together an internship program. So basically, like trying to attract new talent, young people to become loan officers. And I was like, sure, what the hell? Like, it's ultimately a sales job. I can figure that out. I literally knew nothing now. Like, I mean, when I took the internship, I had my uncle was an insurance sales guy, and he's like, are you sure you want to get into that? I think refinances are drying up. This was in 2012 or something like that. And I was like, yeah, I think it'd be okay. Mostly because I didn't know what a refinance was. I was like, yeah, don't worry about it, uncle. But anyway, so went through, did that for 3 months, I think the program was, and then ended up getting hired by a loan officer that was like the top producer actually at that company, RPM Mortgage. She had found herself in a difficult spot. She had left a prior mortgage company, and they were not happy about her leaving, so she needed someone to come in and show some energy and work crazy long days to help keep the business flowing. So I did that. I was actually commuting down to Southern California to do that. So I'd fly down Monday morning, fly back home Friday night, sleep on her couch, and just crank out loans for 15 hours a day, knowing nothing. Again, like that's important. I was like, as I'm on the job learning guides and like, okay, get a question. I'm like, yeah, 1 second, all regs. Yeah, that's pretty good. So it was a lot of that, just like learning trial by fire. So I did that for about a year with her. Got tired of the commuting down. It was a great opportunity. She was a phenomenal mentor. I like really, I think, set me off on a great path. But then I got offered a job to be the junior LO to the branch manager of RPM Mortgage's Berkeley office. Met with that guy, Chet Goad. Shout out to Chet. Had a hell of a time getting to know him. We had a lot of fun together. I ended up working with him for 3 years or so. And similar deal, right? Like threw me into the deep end. He had been in the business for 25 years or whatever, and he was kind of getting ready to wanted it down. And so he was like, look, you're either going to succeed with this and maybe I can leave you my business, or you'll fail and I'll fire you. Sounds like a deal, Jet. So ultimately, like, made it a few years with him, kind of, figured out how to complement each other. I was obviously, younger and a little bit more forward facing on the tech side. And I was in pure hustle mode. I had no problem working 18-hour days and just getting after it.
And what year was that?
Oh, God. So this was 2013, I think, that I started with Chet, somewhere around there.
So real quick, what I'm going to pull out of this, right? Because my job here, my goal is when I interview everybody is you guys tell your story. Sometimes don't even think about some of the things because it's just your story. Yeah. Sure. But the reality is there's some true nuggets in everything, right? And one of the nuggets I want to point out to somebody is, if you're just starting out, the reality is sometimes don't worry so much about being the big dog right away. Worry a little bit more about trying to learn the business and learn from people in the business that are very good at what they do, because, one door opens up another. And sometimes you get what you need out of somebody, right? And not in a bad way, but it's time to move on. There's nothing more that they can teach you. It's the same thing I feel about coaching. Coaches can be great. And at some point, you should probably move on and learn something from another coach so you can keep growing. Because at the early stages, you have to keep growing. If you don't, you're not really advancing. You're not doing anything better, right? And I know just from personal experiences, I was a workhorse, right? I mean, I worked hard. I had great ideas. I hustled. I did a bunch of stuff. But every once in a while, I needed some fine tuning. And, I ended up paying for it by having a coach. But sometimes I look back and I think, gosh, how great would it have been to be a loan officer assistant for a few years and really learn some of the things up front about how to get business, right? How to handle problems and issues. And that's what growth is all about. So far, I love your story because that's how you started out.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think it's like, not only do you not need to be the big dog, but if you're starting out in an industry, you should seek out to be the small dog to a big dog. Like, not to butcher that analogy, but like that was basically what I did for the first 3 years. I would just go from different high producer to high producer and just be as all in as a human being can be on helping add value. And then in return, I got a shitload of knowledge. So I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
You can do that if you want.
Okay. But yeah, so like just going in. So ultimately during that period of like from internship to eventually becoming my own loan officer, I worked for 3 different mega producers. Like the very first woman that I worked for in Southern California, she was literally the number one female LO in the country in like 2004 or whatever. So a few years before I worked with her, but she was massive. another LO that I worked for did 150 million the year before I joined her. And then Chet, who ended up joining in Berkeley, not quite that same scale. He was a 50 to 60 million guy, but he ran an office. He had started his own branch and had a bunch of other LOs. So that was like another evolution for me where it's like, okay, I've worked for mega producers. I see what that requires. Now let me see more like the business side in addition to the sales side. And that's why, like, ultimately when I went to join Chet, I'd been offered by the other people, but that was why I chose him, because I saw how I could continue my learning trajectory. So anyway, I totally agree. Yeah, so that was around 2013, and he had, like, my first day in the office, it was like, hey, I know you've been working for these big producers, but you're in my office now, so I'm gonna need you to go get me a coffee, a sandwich. Like, he was very much like, he's setting me at the bottom. Like, you're gonna get no special treatment. And I was like, cool, dude, I'm down. Like, you cannot have ego. Like, in general, if you want to succeed in any industry, ego is your enemy. Like, you need to be just a grinder. And like, I don't think a lot of people want to hear that, especially nowadays. Like, work smarter, not harder. Honestly, no. Like, for the first like 5 or 10 years that you're doing something, don't try and work smarter. Just work your ass off. Just work like hell and be productive. Don't be an idiot about it. But as long as you're doing something productive, you should just be working your ass off. So anyway, so that's what I did. So I worked with Shep for 3 years or so, and then he got to a point where he's like, "Look, you're going and doing the lunch and learns. I'm meeting with realtors, and we had done this sort of like integration of ourselves to where we became a team, and it was ultimately with the vision of, at one point, Chet's going to retire, and I'm going to buy the book from him. So it took years to set that up, but we ultimately did that and came to an agreement of like, all right, here's how much we think the book is worth, and because I've worked on the book with him for a couple of years, we think I'm going to be able to continue with it. Definitely like a little leap of faith there. And shoot, I was like 26 or whatever at the time. So it was like a leap on his end for sure too. But anyway, so yeah, so ultimately like bought the book and became the manager of that office, which again was its own, like, I'm 26 years old and I just became the manager of these other LOs who'd been in the business for 12, 15 years.
And how many guys did you have under you at that point?
4 other loan officers, and then, whatever, 2 processors, 2 LOAs, and a couple of admins.
So pause for a sec. I got some questions. First, just a couple statements you made that I liked, right? Ego is your enemy. True story there. I hope everybody realizes that. And I will say, in our industry, there sure is an awful lot of ego. So, I hope the last few years have humbled the people with the big egos, and you can get down to reality. But the other comment you made that I thought was funny, you said, until you're doing something productive, work your ass off.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you got to earn it. So
Yeah.
When you're new, work your ass off, get in there and hustle and prove your worth. Right. Because you didn't just get lucky. I would bet there's a lot of people out there that said, he got lucky, man. Like, this guy just handed him his book. I had to work for mine. It took me years, but you didn't get lucky. You worked your ass off. You went and got coffee, right? I mean, you went and did whatever it took. So I like that. Now I want to focus a little bit on buying that book, because in our industry, there's really not a thing that exists like that, right? I mean, there's some backdoor deals, which is what you had, and I'll say that very few of them actually really work. Yeah. Most producers think their book is worth a lot more money than it probably is. I would also say that there's probably not enough metrics to justify a dollar value. Like, in a real business, you got a lot of metrics that have to be measured before a dollar value can actually be given. And knowing most loan officers, they don't even keep a good CRM. So that's pretty tough. Now, you had the luxury of working with him and working with those clients for, it sounds like, a few years before you bought it. But I'm kind of curious, and let me back up. The reason why I'm curious is because I think I talked about it with you when we first met, but at Ethos Lending, one of the things that we're trying to implement in the entire industry, right? But we're trying to create this. We're calling it the MUM, and it's mortgages under management. And we've spent countless dollars on this platform so far, and it's functioning, but it's not released yet. but basically the concept of it is mortgages under management, and it's to have this conversion from being a loan officer to a mortgage advisor. And then
Yeah.
when that happens, along with all of the technology that we're building, that's going to measure, I mean, we have like over 100 KPIs that we're measuring every aspect of somebody's business, so that when that mortgage advisor is ready to retire, he can come to us as the owner of the company and say to management, say, I'm ready to retire. What's the process? How do we do this? And our commitment to these mortgage advisors is, if you've checked all the boxes, right, and you do business the ethos way, then your book is sellable. And what we're going to do is we're going to post it up for sale to all the loan officers, all the mortgage advisors at Ethos Lending. We're going to step in as a company and say, here's all the KPIs behind it as to why we think this is worth X dollar value. And we've written an algorithm for that. And then we're going to provide financing to all the mortgage advisors to facilitate a buyout. And if nobody wants to buy it contractually, we're gonna agree that we're gonna buy your book of business if you've done X, Y, and Z. So
Yep.
I'm super interested in this because the concept I think is, game changing. It's industry changing because it doesn't exist anywhere. And it really sucks because, like financial planners, they have their assets under management. They got this book that one day they can sell.
Yeah.
Insurance guys, same thing. Loan officers and real estate agents are truly only as good as their last deal. Now, I've never bought into that you're only as good as your last deal bit, because I've been doing the same loans for the same people for 26 years. So I think I'm a little better than that. But the reality is, unless you own the company, and truly, unless it's like a company that's producing business, not your loans, because if it's just your loans, then really you're being given a signing bonus by somebody to come work for them.
Yep.
There's no real retirement, right? Unless you find some ambitious young guy like you, and you make this transition happen. But honestly, dude, I want to change the entire industry because I don't feel that that's right. I feel that, with all, if we do business the right way, we should have a book to sell. So I'm really curious, like, this transition, how it worked for you guys.
Yeah, I wish mom existed as a concept then, because we did not really have KPIs. But I do totally agree. Like I said earlier on, like most of my family is in the insurance business, and my mom has a little insurance brokerage, my uncle does, and they all have sellable businesses. And it's like, shit, why not? So anyway, I totally agree with the principle. So for he and I, we're going to look at the last 3 years of his commission off of the production, average it out over the 3-year period, discount it by 20%, figuring I'm not going to be able to convert all 100%. And I carry a note. Well, he carries a note that I repay via commissions for 3 years after the transition date. And then one of the things that I slipped in there, we mutually agreed upon, not like I was being triggered, but like was, hey, I need to be able to use your name for the first year. Like and if someone asks to get you on a call, like all the loans will go in my name. You won't have regulatory risk, but I need to be able to keep leaning on your name. He'd been working there for, like I said, 25 years. So everyone knew him. No one knew me. So anyway, so that was the last piece of it. And I mean, at the time, it was terrifying. I had a negative net worth. Like I had student loans that I still hadn't fully paid off. I made a couple bucks, like chipped away a little at the student loans, but like, negative net worth and signing on for a loan. So again, leap of faith on both sides, because he knew my finances. He knew if I couldn't figure this out, I was toast. And so anyways, there was definitely high trust, and it was like the years that we had put in together. He knew of me that if I failed, it wouldn't be for lack of effort. It might be for some other reason, but it definitely would not be lack of effort. And he also knew that if I succeeded, I would honor my word and I would pay it. So anyway, so yeah, that was kind of the structure. And in practice, it definitely played out differently than I expected. Like it succeeded. Like ultimately, I paid him back actually a year and change early. So, and that was another big thing for me. I don't want this debt hanging over me. As soon as the money's coming in, I'm pumping it to him, and so it was a good deal for him. And yeah, but the way it played out was, we had sort of like tested the waters and gone to some of his top referring agents, and hey, this is what we're doing for the last couple of years. We get ready for this, and sit down, have a nice lunch, talk it out. Stu's already helped a bunch of your clients, blah blah blah. And everyone without fail is like, of course, yeah, we'll keep referring people to Stu, of course, no problem. In practice, like once the switch flipped, about half of those people went away. And so that was obviously terrifying, people had literally just sat across lunch from a few months before. And then I'm like, shit, I haven't gotten a referral. They were sending chat a few a week, not getting calls back. I'm like, oh God, I got a little problem here. But all things can be solved by hustle. And like the one thing I had going for me, not one thing, but one of the things I had going for me is I was a young loan officer, and there weren't a ton in my market. And Redfin had just been kind of starting to take off in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was like, okay, well, who's a Redfin buyer? It's going to be a younger person who wants to be online. And who's a Redfin agent, generally a newer agent that doesn't have a lot of experience. They're okay with, being salaried and not having the huge upside. And so I started pushing to try and get my foot in the door with Redfin, and eventually got, connected with the right guy who I had done a deal with before. And one thing leads to another. And then I become their preferred lender for all first-time homebuyer classes. Then I start every week. I'm going and presenting these classes. And so I was able to make up the loss in referral business by building that up. But yeah, I mean, it's like there were a lot of scary moments. I mean, honestly, like for those first few years, there were a lot of like, shit, did I just go a bridge too far, and is this can all blow up in my face? But ultimately it all worked out.
And how many years had you been in the business altogether at this point?
3? No, wait, sorry. No. So probably 4 or 5, I guess. By the time he fully exited, yeah, I think 4.
Okay.
5, right?
So it's funny. I had a loan officer assistant one time working for me, and I was doing quite a bit of volume. So the truth is, he saw a lot of loans in a short period of time. And after 1 year, he thought he knew it.
Yeah.
And I remember by year 3, he told me, I gotta be honest, when I look back, I realized by the end of year 1, with as much volume as we did, I thought I knew everything. And I realized I was just barely scratching the surface. And more than likely, I was actually just knew enough to be dangerous. But the aspect that he learned later was, knowing how to do a loan is just one aspect of our job, right? Like, okay, you know how to do a loan, right? Like, and okay, then you learn how to be a little creative on some, right? And how to rearrange things and all that. But man, how do you get your phone to ring? How do you cultivate and nurture a relationship to last beyond just, the value of you do a good job by closing loans on time, right? There's so much more to it. And then by year 3, he's like, I finally realized I actually didn't know anything. And now I'm starting to get to that next level of being able to really be a successful, loan officer himself. So
Yeah, that's what I mean.
that was like your timing basically. And, and I think through like the kind of volume that you're saying those people did, versus, you as a loan officer assistant, for example, really you're doing, most of the work probably. But the amount of volume that ran through your hands in let's call it a 4-year period is probably more volume than most typical loan officers do in a 10-year period by themselves, if not 15-year period.
Yeah. No, it's truth. And they were all crafty in their own ways. So it was like, okay, I learned this segment of the business from Chad and from Shelly, the jumbo loans, the Southern California producers, jumbo loans. So it was like I was able to pick up nuggets from all of them, but still, it's not the same. It's definitely not the same. And like the pressure of, it's not just, of course, like I had to make the phone ring because I owe this guy a ton of money. I got to put food on that table. But then it's also like, well, I got this assistant who's used to this amount of production and that amount of bonuses resulting from it. So like the amount of pressure to get the phone to ring is easily the biggest reason why LOs get the commission, because most people can't handle that. Like it is intense. And They're not easy to get through, but you just figure it out. It's unstoppable.
So now let's learn a little bit from your challenges, right? So there's wins, right? You managed to create this, and I think the big takeaway is, go ahead and work under somebody, and you know, if I could offer any advice to anybody is, pick somebody that is probably of similar personality to you, so that you can actually grow like that because I don't mind taking lessons, but I don't want to be working day in, day out with somebody and restructuring how I like to do business as a person because this other person's like that, right? I mean, there are more than one ways to skin a cat, but it might as well be what your personal personality is like.
Totally.
The more you enjoy what you do, the more successful you will be at it.
Yeah, I should have highlighted that. Like that, the first 3 interviews I had with Chad, we didn't talk about mortgages. Like we went and got lunch, and then we got dinner, and he was just asking me like, "What do you think of this? And what do you think of that?" And it was very much like getting to know you stuff. And that, like, Chad is awesome. I love Chad. I hope he watches this. He's an intense guy, very intense guy. So like, yeah, I went to go get coffee the first day. He also got like he had an office that was a 10 by 10 office and this bigger office, but it was his like branch manager office. And he had me configure like an IKEA desk and put it in the corner in his 10 by 10 office because he wanted to just be able to tell me what to do without having to go outside the door. So, but like he went through the steps of making sure he would like me enough to put me through that. And similarly, like I got to know him well enough to know, okay, I'm going to be willing to tolerate a lot of work, a lot of pressure from this guy because I think he's funny and I like him. And even though he's a hard ass, it's like I kind of dig it. So, but the getting to know you and making sure you like view the world similarly and like we had differences in our approach to business. Like I was more tech forward than he was, and I'm not a tech guy. But the way we thought about the world was very similar, and that I think made all the difference.
And And now let's focus on you running your own business, right? You not the new business, but back still in the mortgage business. You're on your own. I'm sure you could still call it, was it Chet or Chad?
Chet.
Chet. I'm
Yeah.
sure you could still call it Chet for advice and all that, but some of the day to day, issues that you're having, growth issues. I always like to call them like major milestones because, like I'll give an example. For me, I got really busy at one point and I'm still trying to do everything myself. And I had a company processor, okay, fine, but she did everybody else's loans too. And quite honestly, right, just like any young, ambitious loan officer, at some point you're like, no, I don't want her working on somebody else's loans. I want mine because I just promised somebody I can close in 15 days and it's not
Yes.
fair to everybody else. So I made a big hire of hiring a personal processor. But that was a major milestone for me because it absolutely like changed the outcome of how I do things. And quite honestly, it put a shit ton of pressure on me because I had payroll now for the first time and just it was in my nature, I didn't want to let that person down, so I worked extra hard to do it. And then the personal assistant came along and worked extra hard for her. And next thing you know, I've got personalized service that I'm offering everybody. And that was the big game changer for me.
Yeah.
What was your thing? Like where did you either experience, pain or pleasure? Like what are some of the things that you can teach people?
How have I can teach anybody anything? But a point of pain for sure. Like day one. So all this happens. I'm like, cool. I just signed this note. I have this guy shitload of money. I have no money. This is gonna be great. Like I was not the natural selection for a branch manager, right? And this was part of Chet's departures. He basically he sold the book to me and he sold the branch to RPM. So the branch started owning RPM, but someone was gonna have to manage it. And he had identified somebody else that he thought was going to step in and be the manager. But as the months started approaching his official exit date, he was getting more and more concerned about that other person's ability to do it. That was the lowest producer in the office, and he was getting concerned that the lowest producer isn't going to understand the big. We had a couple people in the office that were big, 60-ish million producers. So it was not like I was taking over people that were doing 5 loans a year. And so anyway, so like literally like a month before he's supposed to leave, he's like, hey, so I think you need to be the branch manager. dude, I'm literally 26. I can finally rent a car. Like that's a recent big. And and I was like, wait, hey, if you think so, like I'm down. Of course, like I'll try anything. And so that was cool. But the very first day, so like we have that conversation. Chad always kept his cards close, so there wasn't a lot of communication to the rest of the branch as to what was happening. And then, like literally the day before he leaves, he's like, "Yeah, this dude's gonna be the branch manager, and hope you all have a nice life." So the top producers come into my office that day, and they say, "We're gonna give you 6 months. If you can do a good job and you can support us, then we'll stay. Otherwise, we're gonna leave in 6 months." And now that Chet was out, some of the things that were maybe less desirable from their perspective start bubbling to the surface. And so they say, this was Chet's business. And so he started 25 years ago. And so everyone in here is just focused on Chet. So when I need a rush, it goes to the back of the line because Chet has 3 rushes that day. And I haven't been getting the support I need. And I can go and become a $100 million producer if I had the right da-da-da-da-da-da. And honestly, I don't think that you have the experience to help me get there. And so there was 2 producers that were 50 plus million that were sitting across from me telling me that. And, so that was like a jarring moment of, okay, am I fucking this up already? Oops, sorry. Again, sorry. But yeah, so I looked at them and was like, cool, I appreciate that. 6 months is a long time. I can do a lot in 6 months. And yeah, so I appreciate you giving me the heads up, and I'm going to make that happen. Of course, having no idea how, right? And, but that was literally my day one reality was I now owe hundreds of thousands of dollars for a business that I sort of understand, but like I'm definitely still learning. And I'm now managing people who have had long careers succeeding in this business and trying to convince them that they should stay and trust me. So again, stress, a lot of stress there. But
so let me ask a couple questions there. I don't know if you need to manage $50-60 million producers.
Exactly.
I think what you need to do is lead.
Yes, exactly.
Right? You need to be a leader, not a manager. Yes, and I would venture out to say that, the last thing those guys need is somebody looking over their shoulder or trying to manage them. So I'm just going to assume you stepped up because did you keep those guys or did they leave?
Yeah, they're now clients of mine in the new business. They stayed the whole time I stayed in the mortgage business.
And how did you lead them?
I listened instead of just telling them what to do. I said to them in that conversation, the good news with me is now you have a manager that will work any number of hours and literally do anything to make you happy. Now it's just a matter of me understanding what that is. Like, what do I need to hear from you that will enable me to solve whatever problem exists? And that's where they started telling me their turn times aren't good and they can't get rushes on this. And none of it was about like, I'm worried of losing the stabilizing force of an older manager. They didn't give a shit about that. It was all related to their production and feeling that their production was not getting supported and other people could support it better, which in a way was great for me because then it was more of a manufacturing line problem than a expertise tenure problem, which I couldn't solve. I didn't have expertise or tenure. But I did have, like I've always had sort of a natural processing client brain. Like I'm half sales, half process in my mind. And so, and we had a lot of good people there because they were supporting Chet. It was just the way that they had been divided up was intentionally skewed in Chet's favor. And God bless him, of course, right? But so it was just a matter of unwinding that structure to give them something that they could depend on in the same way that Chet depended on it. And I made so many mistakes. Oh my God, so many mistakes. Yeah, like I'll give you one example. So I had this idea of how I wanted to change the manufacturing line, and I basically wanted to make it so every loan we happen to have this genius woman who works with me in my current business, Cindy, who was a UC Berkeley finance grad, and she was like Chet's LOA. She was a UC Berkeley finance grad, exceptionally bright, like mind like a steel trap, and she's just the LOA. And I could ask her any guideline question, and she was my go-to initially. Like, I'm trying to figure this business out. And she's like, oh, yeah, subsection D of, all reg says, blah, blah, blah. And so I just like, okay, we're going to change the manufacturing line. We're going to make Cindy the pre-approver for the whole office. So she's going to pre-approve every file before it goes anywhere. So then you have the certainty that this bright woman has blessed your loan before you go make any promises to your realtors. And we're going to change this part of the processing. Da, da, da. And so I announced that one day after sitting and thinking for a couple of weeks. I didn't talk to anybody about that. Like, I didn't say like, hey, Cindy, is this cool with you? Like, I didn't like all these things that are obvious as a manager didn't occur to me. At 26, I was like, this is the best idea. So we're going to do that. And I assume everyone will agree it's the best idea and just go along. I mean, that was a hilarious learning experience. Cindy ripped me a new asshole. I mean, and again, she works with me today. So like we got past it, but she ripped me a new asshole. And the loan officers, come out of it and they're like, well, sure, if you can pull this off, well, sounds good. But dude, yeah, that first 6 months was brutal. I mean, it really was, like from losing the referrers to the branch being in full chaos mode. But I got through it. I listened.
And now you're in this consulting business by providing virtual assistants and I'm assuming a few different things. What happened? I mean, what was the transition? How come you left the mortgage industry in order to do this in really the same industry? But
yeah. So we're an outsourcing company, and the evolution was such that so I took over the business from Chad. I was, eventually got everything stabilized. I had a few good years of me doing 50 million and Chet fully paid off, so making a good living. And it was like 2019, I think. There was like a dual epiphany that happened. On the one hand, in my personal life, I had taken a vacation. At this point, I'm finally not like 24 and just willing to work 18 hours. It's now like, okay, can I pare this back to 12 hours? And but I was on a vacation and I literally couldn't get my phone to stop ringing, which like good problems, but I was miserable. I was furious. Like the whole vacation, we went to Aruba and I'm in my room 90% of the time looking at the ocean. And I'm like, I could be in my office in Berkeley with an Aruba screensaver and it'd be no different than what I'm doing, except for I flew of time to get here. So I was pissed off and I was like, you know what? The mortgage business is great from a ability to generate an awesome income, but I really want to figure out how I can replicate the income, but have more control over my time and not be on the clock always. And so that was Epiphany 1. And I like, it took me years to figure out what that would look like. Originally, I was like, I'm gonna start buying rentals, and which I did. But then you realize that's more of a get rich slow kind of thing. So I'm like, oh shit, this isn't gonna work. But anyway, so then in the business, another epiphany happened around the same time, which was we'd grown. Like my production had come in and offset the loss of Jets, and then the other loan officers had grown. Like they had told me that first day, like, hey, we can get to a higher level. They did. One of the guys ended up breaking 100 million, and we recruited another LO, and so we had 6 or whatever loan officers in there doing 400 million combined. So we were doing a fair amount of business. And the challenge though was like I had rebuilt the manufacturing line and it was working well, but there are practical constraints on that, which is like you have to have a great person at every step of the whether it's a loan officer assistant or pre-approver or processor. They have to be excellent, obviously, and they have to have the capacity to deal with a number of files. Like this is obvious. But the challenge that I had was at that point I was responsible for the P&L, and it was hard to find equivalently excellent talent. And so Cindy, the pre-approver, 1 in a million. There's not many people like her in general. The processors, they had built up the relationships, all this. So I was trying to figure out how to scale the manufacturing line, and I was really sort of stuck. And I'd interviewed a bunch of processors and a bunch of pre-approvers, and I just was not that impressed. And this was Berkeley, which is a great place for some things and just a god awful place to do business. Like I cannot stress that. It's the worst place in America to do business. It's horrible. They tax your revenue. It's like all insane stuff, like truly an insane place. Sorry. But so like I'm trying to hire a processor, and even that is like, okay, well, if you pay me, $35 an hour, I'll work 10 hours a week. Like, God damn it. So I had all these like issues finding another, rock star to join our team. So I'm like, okay, well, let's go down a tier and say, can I find people to elevate my rock star so they can do more of what matters? So then I'm interviewing college kids. I hire a couple college kids, hire some people that have worked at Starbucks. Flames out, like no work ethic. I'm a bad hirer, I guess. Like I just had terrible luck with all the people that I was trying to teach the business. Like 2 weeks in, they're like, "Hey, I think I could be a loan officer now. Want to?" Okay, get out of here. So I was still trying to solve this problem. I had tried the high level skill, I had tried low level skill in the States, and the company that I was RPM had been doing outsourcing for like shipping and post close QC and all these random things. And I was like, damn, okay, if you guys figured it out for this, like I'm sure I can figure it out at the branch level. And so that was kind of my epiphany there was I think that I can get more out of my great people here in the US by just taking all the bullshit work that exists on every file and having somebody overseas do it for a fraction of the cost. And this results in another challenge because I go and tell the branch this, and they're like, "You are out of your mind. If you don't change your mind, I'm going to resign on Friday." And I'm like, "No, hey." Whoa. So that was its own challenge to overcome. But that was the vision initially, and really how I built this company was I am not a guy that says every job should be outsourced. Who needs loan officers? Just hire in the Philippines. I'm a firm believer, though, in pairing A players in the US with A players in the Philippines. And everyone knows there's a ton of minutia work in the manufacturing line of a mortgage, whether it's, chasing VOEs or sitting on hold the State Farm to get EOI. There's a million things that can be done that don't matter for the client experience. And that was sort of my dividing line with the branch when I was telling them, like everything that impacts hitting the COE date, the client experience, or the realtor experience stays here. Everything else, I'm going to try and do over there because it's a better use of our dollar. And it took a long time to figure that out. And ultimately, another aha was like, I need to pair the rock star in the US with a specific person in the Philippines that they can tell what to do and da 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 da. So anyway, so yeah, all this to say, like that 2018, 2019 time was like major epiphany time for me where I realized like there's a different, like I want to start to control my time more. And there's this play with outsourcing. The two things didn't converge into like me starting this company until 2022. So like I spent 3 years figuring this out in my own branch and hiring 30 people and helping some other branches at my company at RPM.
So at RPM, with the volume you guys were doing, how many outsourcing employees did you have?
I had 30 supporting our branch. And our branch.
Is that 30 people working full time?
Yeah.
Or like 10 hours a pop or something?
30 full time. But what I had done, like eventually I got into a point where, so call it half of those were working full time directly supporting our branch. And then our manufacturing process had gotten some notoriety within the company for like every loan gets pre-approved on the front end and it goes really smooth and da da da. And so I started then like selling that to other branches and saying, pay us $1,500 a loan. You don't need to keep anybody on your P&L. We'll do the whole manufacturing line. So then I was hiring to support that as well. So like in total, I think our biggest year, our manufacturing process, funded somewhere in the ballpark like 850 million, 900 million. So we were attracting
just RPM.
Yeah, and so RPM was I don't know, like 5 or so billion shop. But yeah, so it's like on my end it was those 30 people, and then my current business partner, the COO of RPM, he had 250 people working in the bank doing everything: shipping, junior underwriting, post close QC. So between the two of us, we had almost 300 people working at RPM in the Philippines. So yeah, great learning experience. It was
when you shifted and opened up Night Owl Consulting. Were you kind of doing both at the same time, or did you make that clean break and just get into it?
The latter. I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. That's probably becoming clear. I just in my head, it's like it's either going to succeed or it's not, and I'm not going to half-ass anything. And so I need to be all in. And like there was RPM had been sold around that time, so it was like I was going to have to go to this new company, which is not that big of a deal. LOs change companies all the time, but like I was 32. I had always had my grandpa had started his insurance brokerage. My mom owns her own insurance brokerage. I was wanting to own my own business for real. And I felt like I was halfway doing that as a branch manager. So through all these, like, I was about to have my first child. No, I was about to have my second child. So I'm like, shit, if I don't do this now, like when the kids are 10, I'm not going to go start a company. I probably would still. But anyway, like these are all the things in my head where I was like, yeah, you know what? Make the leap, do it all the way. So I fully left the mortgage business, 100% left. At the time, people thought it was crazy.
And at this point, how many employees do you have? And are they all out of the Philippines?
In the mortgage business? No, it was like 50 total, 20 in the US, 30 in the Philippines.
And to get that kind of manpower, did you have to go to the Philippines and create a separate kind of company or some sort of a platform over there?
No, I had never been to when I decided I was going to start a company in the Philippines, I had never been. And this, so I went and pitched a huge mortgage company on this vision, and there was a lot of stuff that went into like me believing in the launch. Like one of the things is I had figured out hiring within my branch, but I did it through an Australian outsourcing company, and they didn't know shit about the mortgage business. So it was all on me. There was no assistance other than literally like posting on job boards and forwarding me the resumes, which is fine. I figured it out. But like I knew that wouldn't scale, and that there needed to be a hybrid of the outsourcing company really driving to find and train and get the right people for the client, but then letting the client run the show and like manage their own business. And you have to like find that balance. So anyway, so I had pitched a CEO of a company that I had no business talking to on this idea. And as with most things in my life, he was like, I mean, it sounds interesting, but like, I don't think you can pull it off if I'm being honest, but I'll let you try. I'll connect you with 3 branch managers. And if it works, great. And that company now employs 200 people with us, so it worked. But no, I had never been to the Philippines, and I had no idea how to start a company in the Philippines. And then after pitching everybody on this, I went to the Philippines and figured out how to start a company there. And yeah, I spent.
And legally, do you have to have a company over there
to do it the right way? Yes. For a couple reasons. A, for the employees, like to offer them health benefits and paying the Social Security in the Philippines, which we do. You have to have an entity there. And then B, for licensure. So we are NMLS licensed in a bunch of different states, and some of those states require a physical office in the country that you're operating in order to get your NMLS license in the states. And okay, if you don't have a company over there, then you can't have a physical location. So, yeah, so it was so much more than I expected. I was like, this will be easy. Way more than I expected, but you figure it out.
Awesome. And now, what would you say the bulk of your business is? How are you supporting mortgage companies? How can somebody reach out to you and say, man, I need some help, or I need to save some money?
Yeah, sure. Like I think the first thing is that like just have a conversation about what's possible. And I think there are a lot. The first conversation is almost just about like stripping away misconceptions. Like I get I don't want someone who's working when I'm sleeping. Yeah, neither do I. Like all of our employees work your hours. So there are a lot of these misconceptions where it's like, that's almost like the baseline. If what I'm saying is even remotely interesting, then just pepper me with all the reasons you think it won't work. And I probably have a good answer for that. But big picture, like we're basically like a staff augmentation company. So when we do our jobs well, we are an extension of the client's HR, where they can hire people for any role that they would normally hire for, but they can do that hiring in the Philippines. And so our larger clients, that ends up manifesting itself in, of course, helping LOs with executive assistants and helping branches with junior processors and LOAs. But it also then goes into the banking side of hiring full-on underwriters and hiring junior underwriters and shippers and lock desk people. And on the corporate side, IT and compliance admins and all this. So really our job is to augment every aspect of a mortgage company's staffing operations. So we're not a VA company per se. We're a mortgage staff augmentation company where if you have a mortgage job, it's almost a certainty that I can fill it. And it's just a matter of figuring out, is that the right decision for that role, which is a conversation. So
got it. So I got a few questions I want to ask you before we wrap it up. Is there a book that you absolutely love that's impacted your life?
I'll go impacted my life. After I mentioned that when I graduated college, I was broke. So after I graduated, my friends like, oh, we're gonna go backpacking in Europe. I'm like, that's cool. Have a nice time. I'm gonna stay and read for a month. So I was literally like locked myself in my room with a stack of books, and I'm just gonna read because I don't know what the hell I want to do, and I'm gonna figure it out. Um, a couple books stand out, like the two that I'll give you. How to Win Friends and Influence People, classic. Like it just was a very like easy way for me to realize, oh, sales is not all this like bullshitty like ABC is all about closing. It's relationship building, like anything else. So that was a big one. And then the other one, which is going to sound a little weird, but Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. It's basically a book about the doers of the world, and everything gets accomplished because an individual pushes hard enough. And I was coming off of a poli-sci degree where I really had no direction for what I wanted to do. But it really, like, the takeaway that I had, and I remember where I was when I finished the book, but the takeaway I had was like, if I'm going to make something of myself and have a life worth living, I'm going to have to just fucking do it. And again, I keep swearing. But like, yeah, it was really empowering for me that it's like, just own it. Just take it and do it. And just, if shit hits the fan, who cares? But just never for lack of trying will you fail.
Yeah, for sure. And what about a quote? Do you have a favorite quote?
Teddy Roosevelt, Man in the Arena. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. That's the quote.
Awesome.
That's me. That's my whole life. It's like I fail all the time, and I just don't care. I'm going to keep trying.
You fail forward, right?
Totally. And if you like, you're not learning if you're not failing. So failure is a great thing. And people say that it's like trite, but like it's absolutely true. You got to push yourself. You got to fail. Like it really.
How many times did you ask your wife to marry you before she said yes?
Only once, and that was good fortune. But like we had been together for 7 years, so honestly, at that point, she was kind of like, "Hey, hurry up."
And then last question on that: how many times did you try and get pregnant before you got pregnant? I want to see how many times you failed forward.
Yeah, exactly. A few. I mean, like it was not like the longest process. Totally. I've failed forward so many times. When I first started outsourcing, it failed. When I first started in the mortgage business, every day was a failure. It's just like, that doesn't matter. It matters what you do next.
So last question. I'm going to take it back to the mortgage business, right? If I picked you up right now and just dropped you off somewhere in the United States, you have all the knowledge that you have right now. You don't have a lot of money, just kind of enough to pay the bills type of thing. And you are going to get into the mortgage space to be a loan officer. What do you do?
Okay. Piggybacking off of my life experience, I would figure out who the top LOs are in that area, and I would be annoyingly persistent in showing them how I could add value to their business. I would do a lot of shit for free. I would honestly, like, something I would probably do would be like document my journey on like TikTok and Instagram. I don't really like social media, honestly, but it is powerful. And so I would probably do something like, a daily series on like restarting in the mortgage business now that I'm here in wherever, Kentucky. So I would do a minute video every day, uploading it to wherever to just document the journey. And then I would work like hell to be able to piggyback off of the existing strong reputation of a successful person in that area, with the hopes of in 3 or so years breaking off of that. Like, it's not the sexiest path to success, but I think it's the most replicable. Like, I think it would work, and that's why I would do it.
Love it. Love it. Well, guys, that was another great interview. I really appreciate you, Stu, and just how candid you are with everything. Quite colorful in many ways. So I appreciate you. And guys, I hope you guys found value in it. Remember, we're here to empower, equip, and educate you in the way lending should be done. There's always something you can learn. So please digest all of it. Sometimes you think certain things don't apply. Just like you can go to a seminar, You're not going to hear amazing stuff every single time, but I guarantee you're going to hear nuggets out of every little thing that you listen to and make an effort to try and get better at. So take it, do something with it, and go out there and just share the good word. I mean, teach other people. And I think that's where the power comes in. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.